Hello everyone, and welcome to Fresh Master Channel. Today, we are going to have some story from Reddit. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment down below. These simple clips mean a lot to the future of this channel.
Shannon and I first crossed paths in college during our second year, and from that moment, we just clicked. She had a cascade of rich brown hair, mesmerizing blue eyes, and a naturally athletic grace about her. To me, she was flawless. But beyond her looks, it was her personality that truly captured me. Witty, sharp, and incredibly easy to talk to. We became inseparable. 3 months into our relationship, she gave herself to me in the cramped backseat of my car, tucked away behind the city's baseball stadium. It was messy, uncoordinated, and unforgettable. As our bodies finally joined, she started crying. Not from pain, she reassured me, but out of pure happiness. I can still hear her voice from that night. "Stu, we did it," she said softly. And in that moment, I believed we were forever. It turned out, forever only lasted 10 years. My name is Stuart Gray, but everyone just calls me Stu. I was raised in a small Midwestern town, standing 5'11", with sandy hair, brown eyes, and a solid build. I run a modest contracting business, specializing in interior renovations, with a dedicated crew of 5. Shannon, on the other hand, is a music teacher at a local high school. We had built a good life together, a comfortable home, financial stability, and a shared dream of starting a family soon. For a decade, our marriage felt like everything I had ever wanted. Our passion for each other never faded. Maybe not every day, but often enough to keep our connection strong. 3 times a week, give or take. No matter what, we always shared an embrace before falling asleep. Every morning, waking up beside her, I felt like the luckiest man alive. I adored her completely and unconditionally. If it ever came to it, I would have given my life for her without a second thought. But looking back now, I realize I should be speaking in past tense. Something happened, something so gut-wrenching, so soul-crushing, that I still struggle to make sense of it. Being a contractor in the Midwest, most of my work happens when the weather allows. Nobody wants their home torn apart when it's 15 below zero and buried under snow. That's why Shannon and I always took our vacations in the winter, over Christmas, New Year's, or spring break. Summer was my busiest time, while she often traveled, to visit family, go on shopping trips with her sisters, or take professional development courses for her teaching license. But winter getaways were ours. That year, we had planned something special. 2 weeks in a high-end resort in the Bahamas. A chance to unwind, reconnect, and spend uninterrupted time together. At least, that's what I thought. Standing in the security line at the airport, I had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. If someone had suggested otherwise, I would have laughed. We were solid. We were unbreakable. I just didn't realize how quickly everything could fall apart. It started with a man in the terminal. He was staring at Shannon, not in the casual way strangers do when they notice someone attractive, but with intent. He wasn't just looking. He was trying to catch her attention. I pretended to check my boarding pass, but kept him in my peripheral vision. His glances were quick, measured. Then I saw Shannon's response, a tiny flick of her hand, a subtle "not now" gesture. His reaction? A knowing smile and a nod. A cold weight settled in my stomach. They knew each other. How well, I had no idea. But something inside me stirred uneasily. I kept my eye on them as we made our way through security. They didn't speak. They didn't acknowledge each other again. But the unease remained. I grew quiet, though Shannon didn't seem to notice. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe I was imagining things. I hoped, desperately, that he wouldn't be on our flight. I was wrong. He was seated 15 rows ahead of us. Then came another red flag. Shannon, who always insisted on the window seat, suddenly decided she preferred the aisle. I had already booked the window for her, taking the middle for myself, but she claimed she wasn't feeling well and wanted quick access to the restroom. Trying to be considerate, I asked the woman in the aisle if she'd mind switching. She kindly agreed. Once we were airborne, I pretended to doze off, pulling my cap low over my face while keeping my attention on Shannon. 15 minutes passed. She checked to see if I was sleeping. Then, as quietly as she could, she slipped out of her seat. As she walked down the aisle, she lightly brushed her fingers against his shoulder. It was quick but intentional. She continued toward the restroom. A few moments later, he followed. When they crossed paths in the aisle, they didn't simply step aside. They paused. Their eyes locked. His hand rested at her waist, hers briefly pressed against his chest. They exchanged hushed words, small smiles. As she turned to leave, his hand drifted lower, grazing the small of her back. She smiled again. And that was all the confirmation I needed. They weren't strangers, and whatever this was between them, it wasn't new. It hit me like a hammer to the chest. My marriage wasn't just in trouble, it was crumbling. I turned away as Shannon returned to her seat and fastened her seatbelt, my mind spiraling. How could she do this? To me? To us? How long had this been going on? Who was this guy? And just how deep did their history run? The rest of the flight passed in a blur. I held on to the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't be on our next flight to Nassau. But, of course, he was. As we boarded, I spotted him a few rows behind us, casually flipping through a magazine, making no effort to acknowledge Shannon. Meanwhile, she had miraculously recovered from her so-called stomach issues and settled into her usual window seat without a word. After we landed, we grabbed our luggage, rented a car, and headed to the resort. As I drove, Shannon was busy on her phone. "Who are you texting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Just my mom and sister, letting them know we made it." Her response was smooth, casual. Maybe that was true, but my instincts told me otherwise. Our suite was breathtaking, with a balcony that overlooked the ocean. But even in paradise, I could feel something between us had shifted. I needed to do something, to remind her of us, of what we had built together. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her from behind, and pressed a kiss to her neck. "Do you have any idea how much I love you?" I murmured. She turned to face me, kissing me lightly. "I love you too, baby." But something was off. Her gaze seemed distant, unfocused, as if part of her had already left. A chill ran through me. "You know I'd never do anything to hurt you, right?" My voice cracked slightly, thick with emotion. Her body tensed. "I know that, Stu," she said, her eyes glistening. "And I know you'd never hurt me, or our marriage." I swallowed hard. "And I know you'd never hurt me either." She hesitated. Then she looked away. And in that instant, I knew. If she hadn't already crossed the line, she was about to. I released her and walked straight to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Sitting on the edge of the tub, I kept asking myself the same questions. How did this happen? What did I do wrong? Why didn't I notice sooner? But most of all, is there anything I can do to stop her from completely destroying us? Or is it already over? I splashed water on my face and stepped out of the bathroom. Shannon stood there with a strange expression. "Oh my God, Stu," she blurted. "I just got my period. And I didn't bring any tampons." I blinked. "What?" "My period just started," she repeated. "But you just had one last week." "I don't know, it happens sometimes. Maybe it's the excitement of the trip." She shrugged. "I need to go buy some." She grabbed her purse and walked out. At first, I thought maybe this was a good thing. It would slow down whatever was happening between her and him. But then another thought crept in. This isn't right. This has never happened before. Shannon had been on birth control for years. Her cycle was always regular. So why lie? Unless she wanted to avoid closeness with me while giving herself completely to another man. The thought made my stomach churn. If that was true, then she wasn't the woman I married. No one could be so cruel, so deceitful, using me to fund this trip while planning to betray me in our own hotel room. Feeling numb, I glanced around the room and spotted her phone by the TV. She had left it unlocked. A mistake. I opened her messages. The most recent ones were from someone named Anthony Eisner. My hands shook as I scrolled up, reading their exchange. Anthony: "Hey baby, you look so sexy. Can't wait to have you all to myself." Shannon: "You brat, you almost got us caught at the airport." Anthony: "I couldn't help it, Shan. Seeing you, knowing you'll be in my bed soon. I almost kissed you on the plane." Shannon: "Lol, I gave your bum a little squeeze. A preview of things to come." Anthony: "Damn, I love that. When do I get you?" Their conversation picked up after we arrived at the hotel. Shannon: "Anthony, I'm in the lobby." Anthony: "Already?" Shannon: "Just got to my room. Stu's acting weird." Anthony: "Who cares? When are you leaving him so I can have you full time?" Shannon: "I told you from the start I can't and won't do that." Anthony: "Why?" Shannon: "Because Stu is a great husband. He loves me, provides for me, gives me a life you never could." Anthony: "But I'm better in bed." Shannon: "God, yes. No one does it like you." Anthony, that's why I need more than just Zex. I want all of you. Shannon, Stu and I are planning to have kids soon, so these 2 weeks, they're just for you, baby. Anthony, what? Shannon, I told Stu I'd stop taking the pill after this trip, but I actually stopped 3 weeks ago, so if you can get me pregnant now, he'll think it's his. Anthony, damn, Shan, you're wild. Shannon, and I love it. Anthony, I'll put a baby in your belly. Shannon, God, you're making me so wet, I can't wait to feel you inside me. Anthony, what about Stu Boy? What if he wants you in the next 2 weeks? Shannon, he won't. I'll tell him my period started again, and conveniently, it won't stop until we get home. Anthony, LOL. You think he'll believe that? Shannon, of course. He trusts me completely, and when we're back home, I'll make it up to him. Anthony, damn, he's so stupid, such a loser. Shannon, stop calling him that. He's a good guy. Anthony, fine, meet me in the lobby in 5 minutes. I stood frozen, my mind reeling. Almost instinctively, I moved to put Shannon's phone back, but stopped. These messages could serve as evidence in a divorce. I considered swapping it with mine, but decided against it. My phone held all my personal data, and she was the one who started this mess. Let her figure it out. I kept both phones. I knew she'd soon realize hers was missing, but by then, I planned to be long gone. Nausea churned in my stomach, and I rushed to the window, staring blankly at the Caribbean Sea. Just hours ago, I had been the happiest man alive, ready for 2 weeks in paradise with the woman I loved. Now, my world had imploded. I had never felt so alone, humiliated, and enraged. A burning desire for revenge flickered inside me. Then, as I glanced at the pool below, I saw them. Shannon and Anthony wrapped in a passionate embrace. His hands roamed her body as they kissed deeply. My stomach turned. But I forced myself to grab the video camera I had bought for this trip. If they were careless enough to be in plain sight, I would make sure I had proof. Zooming in, I recorded every disgusting moment. I needed a plan, fast. They had likely already devised a way to keep me occupied while they spent time together. And now I had to outplay them. Still filming, I saw them share one last kiss before Shannon walked away. She'd be back in the room any minute, and I had to get myself under control. I went into the bathroom and turned on the shower, trying to steady my breathing. If she asked, I'd say I needed to freshen up after the flight. Minutes later, I heard the door open. "I'm back," she called out. "I brought water and tampons." "Great, be out in a minute," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Something felt off. Why bring water? The resort provided bottled water in every room. Then it hit me. She plans to sedate me. My mind raced. If I refused the water, she'd get suspicious. If I drank it and it was spiked, I'd pass out, leaving her free to sneak off. I had to play this right. A knock on the door. "You okay? You've been in there a while," she asked, her voice sweet but laced with something else. Was she actually worried about me? Or just anxious to get to her real plans? My anger flared, but I stayed calm. When I stepped out, she was by the bed, sipping from a water bottle. She handed me another, and I noticed it was already open. "With this heat, we need to stay hydrated," she said, meeting my eyes before quickly looking away. I took the bottle, pretending to take a sip as I turned back to the bathroom. Instead, I spat the water into the sink, emptied the bottle, and refilled it with water from the counter. When I returned, she was busy unpacking, unaware of my switch. Then I noticed it. Laid out on the bed was a sleek red dress. "That for dinner?" I asked. Seems like a tease, considering we can't have Zex. She hesitated, then smiled. Since I brought it, I might as well wear it. She wasn't dressing for me, she was dressing for him. I pressed further. "You must be exhausted from all this traveling." A flicker of hesitation crossed her face. Gotcha, she expected me to be out cold by now. I needed more proof, so I played along. Taking another fake sip, I let my eyelids droop as if growing drowsy. In reality, my heart was pounding. "Yeah, feeling kinda wiped," I muttered. "What time's dinner?" "Not for a couple hours, why don't you rest? I'll wake you up when it's time." She said it so naturally, I almost believed her. I let out a yawn. "Good idea," I murmured. "Just don't let me sleep too long. I want to spend as much time with you as possible. I love you." She flinched. "I love you too," she said, but it sounded forced. I lay down, slowing my breathing, pretending to drift off. Moments later, I heard her take out her phone. "Hey, it worked. He passed out," she whispered. A man's voice, muffled through the speaker, asked, "How long will he be out?" "Long enough. We have the whole night ahead of us," she replied. She giggled. "I can't wait to feel you inside me." My stomach clenched, but I kept still. Meet me in an hour at the Sandpiper bar. I want to freshen up first, she said. He chuckled. You're so bad. I can't wait, love, she murmured. Bye. She hung up and started getting ready for her night of betrayal. I barely cracked my eyes open as she picked out a black lace G-string and matching push-up bra. Rage burned in my chest, but I stayed motionless. The shower turned on. I had 10 minutes. I leapt from the bed and went straight for her purse. Inside, I found a small bottle, no label. Opening it, I saw white capsules. Sleeping pills. This must be what she put in my water. I took out a handful, wrapped them in a napkin, and slipped them into my pocket before replacing the bottle exactly as I found it. I barely made it back to the bed before she shut off the water. Now it was my turn to play the game. Shannon took her time getting ready, nearly 45 minutes. The moment she stepped out, I jumped up and dressed as quickly as possible, my mind racing. I needed more video proof of their affair. I also needed to ruin their plans, and most importantly, I had to get home early, file for divorce, and take control. Freezing accounts, canceling credit cards, making sure she had nothing left to stand on. Grabbing my video camera, I hurried out. The hotel was small with only 2 bars, but the Sandpiper was larger with a dance floor. I found cover behind some palm trees, close enough to film, far enough to stay hidden. The zoom lens worked perfectly. There she was in that damn red dress, the one I had always loved. But now, seeing it wrapped around her for him, my blood boiled. They laughed, touched, kissed, just like Shannon and I used to. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to storm in and rip them apart. No, I needed to be smart. I hit record. After an hour, the DJ started playing music, and they danced, lost in each other. I watched for another hour, barely containing my rage. Just as I was about to leave, they hurried off the dance floor. I followed at a safe distance, filming as they stole kisses along the way. They stopped at his room, small, first floor, no ocean view. Cheap creep. Through a partially open curtain, I caught everything. They left the lights on, and as they undressed, I recorded every second. Shannon had made her choice. I stayed outside for what felt like forever, watching him take what was supposed to be mine. Midnight approached, and I wondered if she would return to me. Then their voices cut through the night. Are you sure the pills are safe? I don't want him having a seizure or something, she asked, her voice laced with fake concern. How sweet, he chuckled. Relax, baby. He'll sleep for at least 6 hours. Might wake up with a headache, nothing more. You only used 1, right? Yes, just 1. Good. 2 would knock him out for 12 hours. She sighed. I don't want to overdose him. The creep laughed again. Then just keep slipping him 1 every night and we'll have all the time we need, he said. I want you pregnant before this trip is over. Here, take this extra key. If you can sneak away during the day, we'll meet here. They laughed together. My stomach turned, and I vomited into the bushes. That was it. I had all the proof I needed. It was time to ruin them both. Shannon planned to spend every night with him. My first move was to change that. Back in my room, I reviewed my notes and formulated a plan. The key was to keep them apart, long enough for me to do what needed to be done. Knocking the hell out of her lover sounded satisfying, but I needed to be careful. Sedating him was an option. Turn the tables. Make him the vulnerable one. He wouldn't know what hit him. But first, I had to distract Shannon. The hotel spa was the perfect solution. Massages, facials, beauty treatments. I'd buy her a luxury package as a gift and guilt trip her into going. She wouldn't refuse. She'd done the same to me plenty of times before. 3 hours apart was all I needed. Satisfied with my plan, I lay down, pretending to sleep. At 5 a.m., Shannon finally slipped back into the room. She quietly changed, climbed into bed, and curled up beside me. I wanted to push her away, but I stayed still, waiting for the right moment. By 7 a.m., I stirred, stretching as if waking up naturally. She was out cold. I took a quick shower and headed to the spa, hoping to book her treatment before she woke. I also needed to check flights. Getting out of here as soon as possible was my next priority. The spa opened early. A young woman at the counter helped me choose a package. I wasn't interested in the services, just how long they would keep her busy. 3 hours. Perfect. The first available slot was at 2 p.m. I booked it immediately, smiling at the irony. While she enjoyed her pampering, I'd be busy making sure her lover paid for what he had done. With that taken care of, I stepped outside, taking a deep breath of warm Caribbean air. Shannon needed sleep. After all, she had spent the night exhausting herself for another man. But she had no idea that today, everything was about to change. By 9 a.m., I returned to the room to find Shannon still asleep. Keeping quiet, I rummaged through her purse, retrieved her phone, and checked her messages. A new text from Anthony had come in within the last hour. "Last night was amazing. Any chance you can slip away this afternoon?" Rage bubbled inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. The final act was approaching. I just had to stick to my plan. Shannon stirred, so I quickly put her phone back and leaned over, gently kissing her forehead. "Morning, sleepyhead," I said softly. "I'm sorry about last night, falling asleep so fast and ruining dinner, but I have a surprise for you." She smiled sleepily, stretching. "What kind of surprise?" "A spa day, my way of making it up to you and showing how much I love you." Even half asleep, I caught the slight hesitation in her eyes. She wasn't just surprised, she was calculating. Doubt flickered in her expression, and in that moment, I knew. She wasn't sure if she loved me anymore. "You don't like it?" I pressed, holding her gaze. She forced a smile. "No, I do. I just wish you had asked first." "Then it wouldn't have been a surprise," I said lightly. "Don't worry, I booked it for 2 p.m. that way. We still have some time together." She nodded. "Thanks. That's really thoughtful." "Good. Now, why don't you freshen up and we'll grab breakfast?" She agreed, grabbed her purse, and headed to the bathroom. I already knew what she was doing, texting him. Instead of making her suspicious, I walked over to the window. Down by the pool, Anthony stood chatting with 2 women, his phone in hand. A moment later, he typed something and put it away. She must have told him about my surprise gift, but he didn't look too concerned. His attention quickly returned to the women, who laughed at whatever he said. Then, with a casual wave, all 3 disappeared from view. Already making backup plans? That was useful information. At breakfast, Shannon barely touched her food, just fruit and coffee. "Not hungry?" I asked. "Is it your period?" "Yeah, maybe," she muttered, distracted. She was rattled. Good. Let it eat at her. After breakfast, we took a stroll along the beach. I snapped photos of the scenery and of Shannon, complimenting her beauty, telling her what a wonderful mother she'd be someday. She stiffened. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired," she said quickly. "Mind if I go back to the room for a nap before my spa appointment?" "Of course. I know vacations aren't fun when you're not feeling great. Go rest. I'll see you after your treatment." She nodded and walked off, without even kissing me goodbye. Soon she'll get a real goodbye. Now I had work to do. I wandered along the beach, lost in thought, when I spotted 2 familiar women, the same ones who had been with Anthony earlier. Now they were walking alongside 2 massive guys, built like football players. As I got closer, I caught part of their conversation. "Come on, baby, don't be like that," one of the men coaxed. "Dave and I want to go deep-sea fishing. We'll be back before dinner." One of the women huffed. "Yeah, it's always like that. You guys run off, and we're stuck at the hotel." "There's plenty for you to do," the other man pointed out. "Shopping, pool, beach, even the gym." The second woman scoffed. "Oh, so now I need the gym? You think I'm fat?" I smirked. It was clear. Their boyfriends had ditched them for the day. And Anthony had lost his shot. Poor creep. After wandering the resort for a while, I decided to check on him myself. If Shannon skipped her spa appointment to be with him, I wanted more footage of their affair. I scouted the hotel, waiting, watching. Then, I found myself near his room. Voices drifted through the door, not Shannon's. I carefully set up my camera on the windowsill, angling it to capture the inside of the room. Then I stepped away, waiting to see who emerged. It took time, but patience paid off. Eventually, the door opened and the 2 women I had seen earlier walked out, laughing and whispering to each other as if sharing some inside joke. I retrieved my camera and returned to my room. With Shannon still at the spa, I had time to review my footage. What I saw made my stomach churn. Anthony had talked them into a ménage à trois. The recording played like a low-budget adult film, him with one woman while the other watched, then switching places. I sat back, shaking my head. And then, an idea hit me. If I timed things right, I could leave while Shannon was still here, scrambling to figure out what happened. Tonight, she'd probably try sedating me again before sneaking off to him. But what if I got them first? If I slipped something into their drinks, they'd be out cold before making it back to his room. The timing had to be perfect. For extra leverage, I burned a copy of Anthony's little escapade onto a DVR. If he wanted to sleep with my wife, I figured his latest conquest deserved to know exactly who he was. As a precaution, I copied everything, from the first moment I caught Shannon cheating to now, and mailed it to my brother Frank, just in case. If something happened to me, at least someone would know the truth. As I checked the time, I realized Shannon's spa treatment was nearly over. I decided to take a quick walk around the hotel to locate the rooms of the two women who had been with Anthony earlier. Their boyfriends had gone deep-sea fishing, and I figured they might be interested in what their girlfriends had been up to while they were away. It didn't take long. I spotted the women leaving the pool with towels in hand, heading back inside. I followed discreetly and watched them enter separate rooms next to each other. Perfect. That solves one part of my plan. If things played out the same way they had the night before, by morning, I'd have completely derailed Shannon and Anthony's little getaway. Back in my room, I called the airline to book the earliest possible flight home. The best I could get was 10 a.m., later than I'd hoped, but it would have to do. Then, I went to the front desk and informed them that Shannon and I would be checking out at 8 a.m. due to a family emergency. They expressed their sympathy, wished me well, and I thanked them before heading back upstairs. At this point, I was fully committed. No matter what, I'd be leaving first. If things didn't go as planned, I'd still fly home before her and make sure she returned to a wrecked life. But if everything did go according to plan, she'd be stranded here for days, maybe even weeks before making it back. Plenty of time for me to dismantle everything she took for granted. The plan was simple. Let Shannon think she sedated me, fake sleep, and let her sneak off to Anthony, go to the bar, wait for the right moment, and spike their drinks with whatever she had used on me. If timed perfectly, they'd pass out just before or right after reaching his room. Once they were unconscious, take Shannon back to our room, then return to rob Anthony blind. Wallet, cash, passport, credit cards, clothes, everything. Deliver a little karma to the two women who had their fun with Anthony earlier. I'd slide a DVR under their doors with footage of their little escapade, hoping one of their boyfriends would find it first. Do to Shannon what I did to Anthony. Take everything she brought except the clothes on her back and her purse. In her empty wallet, I'd leave a note so she'd know exactly who was responsible. All I had to do now was wait. Shannon returned to the room at 5:30 p.m., glowing. "Stu, thank you so much for the spa day," she said, stretching luxuriously. "It was amazing. I feel like a whole new woman." I forced a smile. "Glad you liked it. When I first told you about it, you didn't seem all that excited, but I just wanted to show you how much I love you." She winced at my words, her eyes suddenly glassy. "Thanks again. I do love you, you know." This time she sounded like she meant it. "Anytime, baby. We have dinner reservations at 7. But why don't we rest a bit before getting ready?" She nodded, then grabbed her purse and went into the bathroom. Minutes later, she returned with 2 bottles of water, handing me one. "Drink up. I want to go dancing tonight, and you better stay hydrated," she teased with a wink. I chuckled. "Sure, just let me hit the bathroom first." Inside, I followed the same routine, emptying the bottle, refilling it with clean water from the counter. Flushing the toilet to make it seem natural, I returned to the bedroom and took small sips, playing along. 15 minutes later, I pretended to grow drowsy, letting my body go limp and my breathing slow. Soon, I was asleep, quietly watching Shannon get ready for her final night with Anthony. Once she was in the shower, I grabbed her phone and scanned her messages. "Anthony, I can't leave this afternoon. Stu booked me a spa package. I couldn't say no." Shannon, "No problem, baby. I have other plans for now. Are we still on for tonight?" Anthony, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to have you screaming my name." My anger had dulled by this point. The end was coming, and I was ready for it. Before putting her phone back, I rummaged through her purse and found Anthony's key card. Slipping it into my pocket, I restored everything to its place. Shannon took her time getting dressed. Then, unexpectedly, she sat beside me on the bed, gently brushing my cheek. "Baby, after this week, I'll be all yours. I swear," she whispered. "I just needed to get this out of my system before we start a family. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. I know you wouldn't understand, but I have to do this. These next few days are for me. I love you, but I need this." She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered again, "I love you so much, Stu." For a split second, I thought she knew I was awake. Then I realized she was just trying to ease her own guilt. But it was too late for that. Soon she was dressed and out the door. The moment it clicked shut, I jumped out of bed, threw on my clothes, and followed. They met at the same bar as the night before, which was much busier this time. I spotted the 2 women from the beach with their boyfriends. Good. If my plan worked, those couples wouldn't last the night. I found my usual hidden spot, got comfortable, and set up my camera. The night was just getting started, and soon, Shannon and Anthony were going to learn exactly what betrayal felt like. As expected, the night unfolded like clockwork. Shannon and Anthony sat together, laughing, completely oblivious to what was coming. The time to sedate them was fast approaching. I moved toward the bar, staying out of their sight, and found a seat near the drink station where waitresses picked up orders. Ordering a beer, I kept my eyes on them, waiting for their drinks to be placed. A waitress approached their table, took their order, and returned to relay it to the bartender. I got lucky. This was her only order. As soon as she stepped away, I flagged down another bartender and ordered the exact same drinks. The first bartender prepared their drinks and set them on the waitress's tray. She was momentarily distracted in conversation, giving me just enough time. My own drinks arrived, and I quickly paid. Shielding my movements, I opened a capsule, poured its contents into one of the drinks, and stirred until the powder fully dissolved. It sizzled slightly but disappeared into the liquid. I did the same with the second drink. With both glasses in hand, I maneuvered past the waitress, subtly swapping the spiked drinks for the originals. The bar was crowded, and no one noticed a thing. I slipped away, returning to my usual spot to watch and wait. The waitress delivered their drinks, and I anxiously observed, hoping I had timed everything right. It was just after 1 a.m. If the pills worked as intended, they'd be unconscious by late morning. Ideally, they'd make it to Anthony's room before passing out. They sipped their drinks casually at first, and for a moment I worried, what if they don't finish? But then Anthony whispered something to Shannon. She smiled, and they both quickly downed the rest. Perfect. I moved fast, following them at a distance. They seemed eager to get to his room, but as they walked, Shannon started stumbling. Her balance faltered, and Anthony had to support her, slinging her arm over his neck. By the time they reached his door, he wasn't doing much better. His steps were sluggish, his movements unsteady. My timing had been flawless. Anthony fumbled with the keycard, missing the slot several times before finally opening the door. They staggered inside, and I waited a few moments before pulling out the stolen keycard from Shannon's purse and letting myself in. Inside, Anthony was trying to rouse her. She was face down on the bed, barely responsive. "What's wrong, baby? You didn't drink that much," he slurred, swaying. His time was running out. I stepped closer. "Who the hell are you?" He squinted at me, trying to stand, but nearly collapsed. "Just her husband, idiot. Now be a good boy and pass out so I can take her back where she belongs." As if on cue, his knees buckled, and he crumpled to the floor. I glanced down and spotted his phone beside him. Picking it up, I scrolled through his messages and photos. Most were harmless, until I hit the jackpot. A hidden folder filled with explicit images. Dozens of women, some posing undressed, others in compromising positions. Then I saw Shannon, photos of her, and some even worse. As I scrolled further, I started recognizing faces, teachers from Shannon's school, wives of male teachers I had met. Well, looks like Anthony has a thing for married women. The fallout from this would be ugly. I checked his contact list and made a decision. Every incriminating photo, except Shannon's, needed to be shared. In just a few minutes, I sent them to every contact in his phone, including several husbands of the women in the photos. When Anthony woke up, he'd have much bigger problems than me. Next, I forwarded the explicit photos and videos of Shannon to her phone, then transferred them to mine. Insurance. After turning off his phone, I gathered his belongings, clothes, toiletries, everything he had brought. I also emptied his pockets, taking his wallet, cash, credit cards, driver's license, and passport. Let's see him try to leave the island now. Once I had packed up his suitcase, I turned to Shannon. She was still out cold. I carefully lifted her into my arms and carried her back to our room, laying her on the bed. Then I returned to Anthony's room, grabbed his suitcase, and made one final stop, an outdoor dumpster. Tossing his luggage inside, I buried it under piles of trash to make sure it wouldn't be found. Back in my room, I started packing. Shannon's things got the same treatment as Anthony's. I left her nothing but her clothes, purse, a pack of tampons, and an empty wallet with a note inside. By the time I finished, it was past 4 a.m. I needed to be at the airport by 9. Shannon had finished her drink around 2 a.m., meaning she'd be out until at least noon. Anthony would likely come to around 10 a.m., but by then I'd be long gone. Before leaving, I had one last task. I grabbed the 2 DVR discs filled with Anthony's earlier activities and slipped them under the doors of the rooms where his other women were staying. If their boyfriends found them first, well, that was Anthony's problem. Standing in my room one last time, I looked at Shannon, still peacefully asleep. A deep sadness settled over me. I had once wanted a future, a family with her, but she had made her choice. I grabbed her suitcase, walked back to the dumpster, and threw it in. By the time she woke up, I'd be halfway home, and she'd be left with nothing. Back in the room, I searched Shannon's purse one last time. No cash, no credit cards, no passport. She would have just as much trouble getting home as Anthony. Exhausted, I sat in one of the chairs, but my mind was already on my next steps. The moment I got home, I'd drain our bank accounts, cancel the credit cards, and move everything I owned out of the house. A storage unit would do for now. I just needed to be out before she returned. At some point, I dozed off, and when I woke up, it was nearly 7 a.m. Stretching, I walked over to the bed, took one last look at Shannon, then carefully carried her outside and placed her on a poolside lounge chair. Since I was checking out, I didn't want her in the room when housekeeping arrived. Before leaving, I grabbed my luggage and made one final sweep of the room. Then I had an idea. Returning to the pool, I took Shannon's phone and sent every explicit photo and video to her entire contact list, except for her young nieces and nephews. But her parents, sisters, co-workers, they'd all get a nice surprise. At the front desk, I asked for a piece of tape. With it, I removed her phone battery, placed the tape over the contacts, and put it back in. It would appear dead, and without money, getting it to work again wouldn't be easy. Just after 8 a.m., I heard shouting. One of the boyfriends from yesterday had found the video I left under his door. "You're a cheating hooker," he yelled. "Tell your family the wedding's off. You can figure out how to get home on your own." The other guy was eerily calm as his girlfriend begged him to stay. "Baby, please, it was a mistake. It meant nothing." "You're a traitor," he said coldly. "Go to your new boyfriend if he's even able to function now." His words made me wonder, what had they done to Anthony? Minutes later, an ambulance arrived, sirens blaring. The hotel manager led paramedics to Anthony's room as guests gathered to watch. I hoped he was still alive, but honestly, I wasn't sticking around to find out. I quietly slipped into a taxi and headed for the airport. As I turned my phone back on, a voicemail popped up from my brother Frank. "Stu, what the hell is going on? I just got a bunch of photos and videos of Shannon. Call me." At the airport, waiting to board, I called him back and laid everything out. How Shannon cheated, how she planned to get pregnant with Anthony's baby, and how I'd made sure her life was about to fall apart. Frank was stunned. At first, he thought I was joking. But when I told him to really look at the videos, he realized I wasn't. "Jesus, man, I'm so sorry. If you need anything, let me know." "Thanks, Frank. I'll figure it out." When I landed, I turned on Anthony's phone and found over 30 angry messages and a dozen voicemails, all threatening him. Seems my little broadcast had been well received. After collecting my bags, I picked up my car from long-term parking and started driving home. On the way, I mapped out my next move. A divorce was inevitable, but Shannon walking away with half of everything? That didn't sit right. She betrayed me. Why should she get rewarded for it? As I pulled into town, a better plan started forming. She had destroyed our marriage. Now I was going to destroy her life. The moment I got home, I called Frank and asked if he could help me move my stuff out before Shannon returned. He agreed without hesitation. Then I powered on my phone. 20-plus voicemails, dozens of texts. Most were from Shannon's family, confused and panicked about why she wasn't answering them. No messages from Shannon herself, though. That meant she still hadn't figured out how to turn her phone back on. I smiled at the thought. When she finally did, she'd find an inbox flooded with messages questioning why she had sent explicit videos of herself to everyone she knew. Now it was time to clean house. Literally. I canceled every credit card and emptied our joint bank account into my personal one. Every gift Shannon had given me over the years went straight into the trash, unless it had value. Those I sold online or pawned. The landline? Disconnected. If anyone wanted to reach me, they'd have to call my cell. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that Shannon finally got her phone working. Her first texts were panicked. "Where are you? Why did you leave me? Are you okay? I think I was robbed." Then the realization hit. Why? Why did you do this? Couldn't we have talked first? I ignored the rest. Let her sit with the consequences. The next day was a whirlwind. I had no idea when Shannon would make it back, so I had to move fast. First, I bought boxes to pack the last of my things and rented a storage unit big enough to hold everything. Then I went to the bank, drained our joint account, and transferred the money into my business account, which I planned to close before disappearing for good. But before leaving, I had unfinished business. Our home was a modest starter house. 2 small bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and 1 bathroom. We had planned to renovate and eventually upgrade to a bigger place once we started a family. Funny how that worked out. With my background in home improvement, I knew exactly how to make some adjustments Shannon would never forget. I spent the morning gathering supplies. By midday, my brother Frank arrived with his pickup truck. After catching him up on my situation, we loaded my things. 3 trips and 5 exhausting hours later, I was officially moved out. I didn't tell Frank about my plans for the house. He would have tried to stop me. Instead, he asked about my next steps. "I'm leaving town and putting this nightmare behind me," I said. "I won't file for divorce. When she comes back, I'll be gone. She can have the house, but that's all she's getting." Frank shook his head. "That won't work. She'll hire a lawyer and track you down. Just divorce her and be done with it. Running will only make things worse. Look, I know you're angry, but don't let that cloud your judgment. Take the hit, split things fairly, and move on." I shook my head. "She cheated and planned to pass another man's kid off as mine. She deserves nothing. I'm not divorcing her. Instead, I'll leave her broke, exposed, and with a reputation she can't escape." Frank sighed, knowing there was no talking me out of it. He warned me not to do anything I'd regret and left. As soon as he was gone, I got to work. I stayed up all night working on the house, making modifications that would leave Shannon with one hell of a surprise. The only thing working in my favor? The storm. A major snowstorm had shut down several airports, delaying return flights. That gave me more time. Over the past 2 days, I ignored most calls. But when I saw Shannon's name pop up repeatedly, I finally answered, not to reconcile, but to gather information. She was sobbing. "Stu, please, it was a mistake. I never meant for it to go this far. I'll do anything, just please forgive me." I felt nothing, but I needed to keep her hopeful long enough to cut her down when the time was right. "Shannon, you broke me," I said, feigning sadness. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Why did you do this? Didn't you love me? Was I not enough?" What I really wanted to do was tell her exactly what I thought of her, but I let her believe she still had a chance. Through tears, she pleaded, "None of it meant anything. He meant nothing. You are my life. Please, Stu, I love you." I let the silence stretch before finally responding. "I just don't know, Shannon. I loved you, but you shattered everything." "No, we can fix this," she insisted. "We'll be even stronger after this. Just wait until I get home so we can talk, please." "When will that be?" She hesitated. "That's the problem. I have no passport or plane ticket. My sister is wiring me money since my credit cards were stolen." "Stolen?" I repeated flatly. "Right. Oh, that reminds me," she added suddenly. "Can you call our credit card companies and cancel my cards?" The audacity. 1 minute she was begging me back. The next, she was barking orders. "Yeah, I'll handle it," I lied. "So, you don't know when you're coming back?" "I'm hoping in a few days," she said. "I spoke to the U.S. consulate and they'll issue me a new passport. I'll call you when I leave." "All right, let me know." A pause. Then softly, "Stu? What?" "I love you. I'll see you soon." I hung up. That meant I had a few more days. Perfect. Enough time to finish my renovations and lay the groundwork for my new life. Without her. The following day, Frank called to check in on me and invited me over for dinner. I agreed without hesitation. I hadn't had a proper homemade meal in over a week, surviving mostly on takeout from the nearest pizza joint and Chinese place. During our conversation, I assured him that I wasn't going to do anything reckless. Then Shannon called. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, her voice carrying an eager tone. "I just got word that my new passport will be ready in a couple of days. Now all I need is a plane ticket and I'll be home. If I can catch an early flight, I'll be there by evening. Will you meet me at the airport? I really want us to talk as soon as I land." "This isn't a good idea, Shannon," I replied calmly. "You should ask your sister to pick you up and take you home. We can talk once you've settled in." I was just stringing her along. By the time she walked through our front door, I'd be over 100 miles away. There was a pause on the line. "Okay, but baby, I love you," she said softly. "I know that if you just give me a chance, we can work through this." "Okay, Stu?" I forced a smile, though she couldn't see it. "Yeah, of course. We'll talk. We'll see where things go," I lied. Just like she had once done to me, I now had a clear idea of when she'd be home. That gave me plenty of time to disappear. The first step was getting rid of my truck, the one I used for work. I sold it and bought a different one, secondhand but in great condition, registered under a friend's name. Next, I broke the news to my crew. I told them I was shutting down the business due to my impending divorce. It was a tough conversation, but I couldn't just vanish without letting them know why. After that, I reached out to an old college friend who lived in Colorado. Back when we graduated, he had offered me a job, telling me there was steady work year-round, houses needing repairs in the winter, apartment turnovers in the summer. When he answered, he sounded happy to hear from me, though he was caught off guard by my situation. He had known Shannon back when we were dating and had always thought we were the perfect match. "I need to know," I said, getting straight to the point. "Are you good with the guys you've got, or do you actually need someone who knows what they're doing?" He laughed. "With the way business has exploded since the marijuana laws changed, my workload has tripled. If you're serious, I'd be more than happy to have you." I told him I wanted everything to be off the books. No records, no way for Shannon to track me or try to get anything from me financially. He understood and agreed. Just like that, the plan was set. All I had to do was leave. In the meantime, Shannon called me multiple times a day. Every time, she told me she loved me, begged for my forgiveness, and gave me updates on when she'd be home. She kept insisting that once she returned, I would be the only man in her life, forever. The day before she was set to arrive, I packed up my things and emptied the house of everything that was mine. The only items left behind were things that belonged to Shannon or things I no longer cared about. I set my alarm for dawn, determined to be out of town before anyone noticed. Before leaving, I asked my neighbor across the street for a small favor. I told him I wanted to surprise Shannon and asked if he could record her arrival home. He had no clue about our problems. He just thought I was being a romantic husband and happily agreed. I told him I'd call when she was about to arrive so he could be ready with his camera. With everything in place, I pulled out of the driveway and left town, heading south toward my new life, one without Shannon. It would take me at least 2 days to reach my friend's place in Colorado. By then, she would already be home. As I drove, I felt something shift inside me. The suffocating anger that had consumed me for days started to ease. Ever since I had seen Shannon and Anthony together by that pool, it felt like my life had been thrown into a pit of misery. But now, for the first time in a long time, I was clawing my way out. Around noon, my phone rang again. It was Shannon. At around 4 p.m., Shannon called me again, asking if I would be there to pick her up from the airport. I gave her the same answer as before. I had things to take care of and would be home after she arrived. "Just let yourself in when you get there," I said casually. After hanging up, I called my neighbor and reminded him to have his video camera ready. I told him there was a special surprise waiting for my wife, and I wanted it all recorded. The following day, I was nearly at my friend's house in Colorado, only an hour away, when my phone rang again. It was Shannon. "The house, it just collapsed. It folded in on itself." Her voice was shaking. "It must have been the snow." I let her words settle before responding. "Wait, what?" I asked, feigning surprise. "I had just put my key in the lock and turned it when I heard this loud cracking sound," she gasped. "Then the whole roof just caved in. Oh my God, our house is gone." I smiled to myself. Right on schedule. "Well, Shannon," I said in an overly cheerful tone, "don't panic. I'm sure your parents will be happy to have you stay with them for a while. As for me, I already made other arrangements." "What the hell are you talking about?" she snapped. "Our house just collapsed. How can you be so calm about this?" I let out a small chuckle. "Oh, sweetheart, everything went exactly as I planned." She went silent for a second. "What do you mean, planned?" "I made some modifications to the house before I left," I said, my voice casual. "In the basement, I put in temporary supports and then used a chainsaw to cut through the nails holding the floor together." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. The lock on the front door was wired to a switch that activated a winch I picked up at a pawn shop for next to nothing. When you turned the key, the winch engaged, pulling the supports out from under the house. The moment you unlocked the door, our home came down. I took a deep breath and delivered the final blow. "You see, Shannon, the house didn't collapse under the weight of the snow. It collapsed because of me. I just did to that house what you did to our marriage." Silence. Then in a voice laced with fury, she hissed, "You son of a—" I cut her off before she could finish. "Good luck finding a new place to live. As for me, I'm just about to settle into my new home." And with that, I ended the call. A moment later, I dialed my neighbor. "Stu, man, you won't believe this," he said before I could speak. "Your house just collapsed. I guess the snow was too much for it. But honestly, it didn't look like there was that much. Definitely not enough to take down an entire house." "Oh, wow," I said, playing along. "Did you get it on video?" "Yeah, the whole thing. Shannon was just about to open the door when, bam, the whole thing went down like a stack of cards." He sounded excited, like he had just witnessed the most dramatic scene in a movie. "Great," I said. "Email it to me when you get the chance, and keep a copy." After that, I powered down my phone and continued my drive, leaving my old life in the rearview mirror. It's been nearly 3 years now, and I've built a new life for myself here in Colorado. I still keep in touch with a few friends from back home, but I avoid any direct contact with family. I don't want them slipping up and telling Shannon where I am. From what I've heard, she finally got what she wanted. She had a baby. For a while, she spread a story that the child was mine, and that I had abandoned her and our son like a coward. Even my mother fell for her lies, desperate to believe she had a grandson. I had a friend reach out to my brother, who then confronted Shannon and demanded a DNA test. I told him that if the child was mine, there would be a match with his DNA. If not, well, that would settle it. Like an idiot, she agreed. The results came back exactly as I expected. The moment my mother saw the truth, she threw Shannon out of the house, screaming at her to never show her face again, with her creep child in tow. As for Anthony, well, let's just say karma caught up with him. Turns out, those 2 guys at the resort, the ones who knock him up, did more damage than I initially thought. He spent over a week in the hospital before being cleared to leave. But when he finally made it home, he had another surprise waiting for him. A few more angry men, ex-husbands of other women he had played around with. And this time, they finished what the first 2 guys started. No one knows exactly where he ended up. But there are rumors. Rumors that he'll never be able to sleep around again. Looks like his days as a player are over for good.